Blood smeared across the linoleum as the sound of steel-toed boots echoed through C-block. A group of guards, not inmates, circled Jason Statham like a pack of wolves that had been fed one name and one directive: make sure he never makes it to general population. His ribs cracked under a riot baton. His face hit the concrete hard enough to shake his vision, but he didn't make a sound, no scream, no curse, just breathe slow, deliberate, drawn from someplace deeper than the body. They didn't understand why he wasn't fighting back. They mistook silence for surrender, but the look in his eyes, buried beneath blood and bruises, told a different story. Jason wasn't down, he was calculating, and he was letting them do this. 6 hours earlier, a transport van rolled through rust-colored gates flanked by watchtowers. Behind the bars, Falkridge Penitentiary, a privatized maximum security facility built like a fortress and run like a kingdom. Jason sat cuffed in the backseat, staring at the reinforced divider. The van stank of dried sweat and cold metal. No words were spoken by the guards who flanked him. They didn't need to talk. This wasn't a standard intake, this was a delivery. Jason's wrists were bruised from flex cuffs, his coat gone, his ID stripped. The only thing they couldn't take was the scar beneath his collarbone, a mark left by someone who now ran operations from inside this prison's executive wing. As the gate slammed shut behind them, a voice crackled over the radio. Package received. Confirmed. Jason didn't look up. Inside the intake block, the usual procedures were skipped. No fingerprint scans, no medical, no photo. Just a hallway lined with cameras that didn't blink. 2 guards, both wearing body armor thicker than standard, escorted him past cell blocks without pausing. The walk was long, too long. It wasn't about distance. It was about making him feel watched, small, contained. They turned left past laundry, then down another corridor lined with storage cages. Then they stopped, and a third man stepped out. He wore the uniform of a supervisor, but the swagger of someone who didn't answer to warden policy. He looked Jason in the eye, smirked, then nodded to the 2 guards. Without a word, they slammed Jason against the wall and began the beating. It wasn't messy. It was efficient, baton to shoulder, knee to gut, elbow across the temple. Jason hit the ground but didn't curl. He planted one hand down, braced. Blood ran from his lip, from his eyebrow, but his eyes stayed sharp even behind the blur. They wanted to break him on entry, but Jason wasn't there to survive. He was there to be seen. Later in the infirmary, Jason lay on a cot under buzzing lights. A nurse sat nearby but didn't touch him. She glanced at his chart, frowned, and slid it back into the tray. His injuries weren't clean, but they weren't chaotic either. Someone had clearly ordered them to avoid vital damage. Hurt him, humiliate him, but not kill him. She asked if he wanted painkillers. He said nothing. She leaned in and whispered, "Why'd they bring you here?" Still nothing. But his fingers tapped the rhythm of an old code, military. She didn't react, but she'd heard it before. Jason wasn't here by accident. He was inserted. Back in the main facility, the man in the supervisor uniform met with another, a high-ranking warden named Preston Vance. Slick hair, white teeth, posed like a politician. Vance looked at the footage of Jason's intake beating and didn't blink. He asked if the problem was handled. The supervisor said yes, Jason was in line. Vance leaned back, pleased. He remembered Jason from a file years ago. Black ops, burned identities, untraceable. Now he was in a cage, and Vance had waited a long time to see it, but Vance was wrong. Jason wasn't trapped, he was positioned. 2 days earlier, a quiet handoff took place between 2 men in a barbershop basement in Nevada. A flash drive, a note, coordinates. Jason had taken the packet without question. The man he got it from, dead 3 hours later. But what mattered was the name inside that folder, Preston Vance. Not just a corrupt warden, not just a profiteer, but a man who orchestrated the deaths of an entire overseas unit and made sure Jason's record was erased to cover it up. Jason didn't go to the authorities. He didn't leak the files. He had himself arrested, because Vance's empire wasn't outside, it was in Falkridge, and Jason was going to burn it from the inside. Back in solitary confinement, Jason sat on a steel bench, one eye swollen, lips split, hands resting on his knees. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't rattling the bars. He was waiting. Across the block, inmates whispered. They'd seen him come in. They'd seen the guards beat him bloody and drag him away like a dog. They thought he was just another fallen man, just another body waiting to disappear. But they were wrong. Jason had let them watch, because in a place like Falkridge, myth spreads faster than truth, and he needed a myth. That night, a guard brought in a tray of food, slid it through, no words. Jason didn't look up. But he noticed something, a folded scrap of paper tucked beneath the bread. He waited until the steps retreated, unfolded it, a number, a name, and a cell location, Nathan Keller, Block D13. Jason's jaw tightened slightly, just slightly. He folded the note and placed it under his cot. The first piece had just moved. Back in the surveillance room, Preston Vance watched Jason's cell on a silent monitor. He leaned in, lips curled in amusement. "He's broken already," he said to no one in particular. But the camera angle didn't show the cot's underside, didn't show the note, didn't show Jason's eyes, now wide open in the dark, waiting for movement. Because the plan hadn't even started. The mauling was the invitation, and Jason had just accepted it. The weight of concrete pressed down from every side, but Jason Statham moved like the walls weren't there. 5 days had passed since his entry into Falkridge. 5 days of silence. 5 days of bruises healing under fluorescent lights and cameras watching his every move. The guards thought he'd folded. Inmates whispered about the quiet one in solitary. But Jason wasn't quiet. He was listening. Nathan Keller's name burned in his mind like a fuse ready to be lit. Keller wasn't just another inmate. He was the reason Jason was sent in. And tonight, the plan would begin. Inside D Block, Keller sat in a private cell lined with hidden comforts, an electric kettle, an ergonomic chair, even a functioning flat screen bolted to the wall. He wasn't pacing. He was reading, calm, composed, untouched. Around him, inmates deferred without hesitation. Even guards nodded as they passed, not with respect but with obedience. Keller didn't need force. He had control, not over men, over systems. And the systems obeyed him because he ran a different operation, experimental recruitment. He used Falkridge as his farm. They thought he was in for tax fraud. In truth, he was here to train soldiers, broken men made into blades, the kind the outside world pretended didn't exist. But tonight, one of those recruits would break rank. Jason had been moved from solitary to a low-tier bunk after Vance decided the message had been sent. He was put into a block where inmates were still figuring out who was worth knowing and who wasn't worth surviving. Jason kept to himself, didn't eat, didn't talk. But when a tall inmate named Reggie tried to push him out of line in the laundry queue, Jason didn't flinch. He simply stepped aside, until Reggie grabbed his arm. What followed wasn't a brawl, it was a surgical correction. Jason dislocated the man's shoulder in one smooth movement, then stepped aside before guards even reached the hallway. Reggie screamed, but Jason never touched him again. The security footage made its way to Keller's block within the hour, and for the first time, Keller looked intrigued. The next morning, Jason found a chess piece in his bunk, a knight carved from soap, a message, an invitation. Jason placed it in his pocket. By nightfall, the guards came, not with batons, with calm voices and official escort orders. Jason didn't resist. He walked the halls like a man revisiting a place from long ago, a place he'd burned out of his memory. But his stride was steady. His eyes already knew the route. As they passed the commissary, he marked the dead zones between camera lines. As they passed the mess hall, he counted which tables had view coverage and which didn't. They led him to a quiet room behind a staff kitchen. No guards, no cameras, just Keller, waiting at a stainless steel table, 2 chairs. Jason sat, no words at first, just the hum of an overhead vent. Then Keller said, "I knew they'd send someone, I just didn't think it'd be you." Jason didn't blink. Keller kept going. "You weren't supposed to survive Kandar, but I guess you were always a problem." Jason's fingers twitched slightly. That word Kandar hadn't been spoken in years. It wasn't a place on a map. It was a black zone. An operation buried so deep that even mentioning it should trigger protocol sweeps. And Keller just said it like a joke. Jason said nothing. But Keller watched the way his jaw shifted. That was enough. In the days that followed, Jason was left alone. Keller never summoned him again. But others started coming. Men with eyes like empty wells, recruits. They approached Jason in the yard, in the weight room near the shower corridor, each one testing, each one probing. Jason didn't fight them. Not yet. He needed one thing first, access. So when a red-haired inmate named Lutz dropped a makeshift cell map under Jason's tray at lunch, he didn't acknowledge it, just ate slowly, slid the paper into his sleeve and left the room at a steady pace. The map revealed an elevator, not marked. Staff access only. It led to a basement level not included in any official blueprint. Jason now had his target. That night, the alarm system in C block glitched, just for 4 minutes, just long enough. Jason moved through the hallway in silence, timing each step between security light pulses. He descended a stairwell meant for maintenance workers, dust-filled, unused. At the bottom was a keypad, 6 digits. Jason had seen the numbers scratched into the back of a laundry cart 2 nights ago. No coincidence, he entered the code. The door clicked open. Inside, a converted war room. No guards, just desks with multiple monitors, half a dozen chairs, and one massive touchscreen map. Each light on the map represented a name. Each name an inmate Keller had converted. They weren't just training. They were prepping for something external, a release, a deployment. Jason moved to the nearest monitor and inserted the drive hidden in his boot heel. It began copying. Camera feeds, medical files, behavioral reprogramming protocols. And then he saw it, his name, his cell, and a status bar, pending clearance. They weren't watching him because they feared him. They were studying him to see if they could break him, recruit him. Footsteps. Jason pulled the drive and stepped into the shadows. 2 guards entered casual, talking about a truck arriving Thursday. Jason waited, then slipped behind them and exited clean. No alerts triggered, no doors forced. He returned to his bunk without anyone noticing, not even the guards assigned to monitor him. But that night, as he lay under the dim light, he made a decision. He wouldn't expose Keller to the outside world. He wouldn't leak the files. He'd do what he came here for, and dismantle the operation from within, piece by piece, from the top down. And it would start with Nathan Keller himself. The prison was humming like a machine about to jam. Jason Statham sat alone in the yard under a sky thick with heat and sirens. Guards paced faster. Inmates were quieter. Something was shifting, not in policy, not in schedule, but in atmosphere. Jason had set it in motion. And now, the weight of every silent day, every strike he absorbed, every whispered code he passed, was about to detonate. He'd planted the seed inside Keller's perfect system. Now, the cracks were blooming. 2 guards escorted a man into Keller's private block. He walked differently, slower, eyes calculating. His name was Shaw, lean, pale, late 40s. The last man Jason ever expected to see alive, because Shaw wasn't just another name from a black file. He was Jason's commanding officer in Kandar, and he died there, or so Jason thought. Keller stood to greet him. They exchanged no warmth. Shaw scanned the surveillance map, pointed to a blinking dot marked Statham, and asked, "Why haven't you broken him yet?" Keller replied, "Because he's not here to be broken. He's here to break us." Shaw didn't deny it. He just said, "Then he needs to disappear, tonight." That evening the prison ran unusually smooth, no fights, no alarms, but Jason knew calm like this meant nothing. It was the silence before pressure blew out the pipe. He wasn't eating in the mess hall, he was watching. He saw which guards stood too stiff, which inmates kept looking at the same corners, which tables had empty seats as if someone important hadn't shown up. He stood, quietly, walked toward the exit, and before he even reached the hallway, the lights cut out. Boom. Total blackout. But it wasn't panic that followed. It was precision. Doors unlocked in sequence, not random, pre-programmed. Jason moved before the chaos hit. He ducked left into a corridor not on the map, lit only by emergency strobes. Behind him, boots slammed concrete fast. Tactical. He burst through a utility door and emerged in the generator room. Inside, red emergency glow lit the metal scaffolding like blood. 4 figures were waiting, not guards, not inmates. Recruits, faces blank, hands ready. These were Keller's elite. Jason didn't speak. He just stepped forward. The first rushed. Jason sidestepped, caught the man's neck mid-swing and slammed his head into a pipe. The next came from behind. Jason rolled low, swept the leg, and stomped his chest before he could get back up. The third and fourth came together, too fast for finesse. Jason absorbed the first punch, let it slide off his jaw, and used the force to spin into a back elbow that cracked bone. The final recruit grabbed Jason's neck and pressed him into the wall. But Jason's elbow came up hard once, twice, until the man dropped. Then silence. 4 down. None dead. That was intentional. Jason climbed the ladder to the control platform and pulled the drive from his waistband. He inserted it into a maintenance port wired into the emergency power grid. The monitors buzzed back online, showing Keller's map, recruit movement, staff overrides, and live feeds from every part of the facility. Jason began flooding it. He didn't erase, he released. Files beamed to off-site servers he'd pre-rigged before getting arrested. Names, transfers, conditioning routines, videos of Keller's secret training sessions, all of it. The system blinked red. Keller, watching from his chamber, stared in disbelief as his screens lit up with "transfer complete" in block text. He knew where the breach came from. But before he could react, Jason's voice came through the intercom, low, calm, final. "You should have let Candor die." Keller hit the emergency lockdown, but Jason was already moving. He used the chaos of resealing doors to loop back into the main cell block, and that's when he saw Shaw. Not on screen, in person, waiting for him inside the mess hall, lit by flickering overheads and half-shadow. They stood 10 feet apart, two ghosts. Shaw said, "You should have stayed buried." Jason replied, "You should have stayed dead." Then they moved, not like two men in a brawl. Like two weapons that had once been tuned for the same target, now aimed at each other. Shaw struck first, clean military form, honed by repetition. Jason absorbed, redirected, struck twice, once to the ribs, once to the knee. Shaw staggered, then pulled a blade. Jason didn't step back. He stepped in. The fight became tighter, uglier. Elbows, blocks, bone on bone. Jason took a gash across his side. Shaw caught a knee to the throat. They broke apart, then collided again. Jason knocked the knife aside, grabbed Shaw's arm, and drove it through the mess hall table. Wood cracked. Jason held him there, bleeding, breathing hard. Then he whispered, "You didn't survive Candor. You sold it." Shaw choked on the words. Jason let him fall. By the time guards arrived, Jason was already in the courtyard, standing in the open, face bloodied, hands empty. Sirens wailed. Vance burst out, shouting, trying to command. Jason didn't move, until the gate behind him opened, not from inside but outside. Federal agents entered, weapons raised, calling names. One pointed to Jason. He nodded once, then raised a small device, thumbed a switch. And every camera in the prison rewound, broadcasting a replay of everything: the mauling, the recruits, Keller's hidden operations, Shaw's survival, every illegal transmission, all of it, public, permanent. Hours later, Falkridge was locked down under new management. Keller was in cuffs. Shaw was on life support, and Vance was already lawyered up. Jason, he was gone, escorted out the back under sealed orders. The agents didn't ask questions, they just drove. A week passed. Somewhere off-grid, Jason stood in front of a rusted radio tower with nobody around for miles. He pulled a photo from his coat, one from Candor, 4 men, 2 of them dead. One tried to bury him, and the other, Jason, still standing. He lit the photo with a match, let it burn, let it fall, and walked into the trees without a word.